Right, before we get going with today's episode, I just want to point out that I've demonetized this. The money has been turned off. I get it. Some people get, understandably, some people get funny about that stuff, but I wanted to mention that before we go on, so now you know. Also, hello, my name is Simon Miller. Welcome to my ridiculous YouTube channel. If you've just kind of found this randomly and you do think it seems a bit odd, it is part of a whole vlog series where we just so happen to talk about stuff like mental health, depression, and, you know, what that can do to some people. And if you haven't seen the news, I mean, it's in the title anyway. I'm sure most people have. The Prodigy's Keith Flint was announced as dead today, passed away. He's only 49 years old, which always makes you kind of, eyebrow up in the air, roll your eyes a little bit because, you know, not even to get to 50 is kind of crazy. But as it did transpire, as it did turn out on the Prodigy's Instagram account, I can't remember which band member it was, but I mean, clearly in just a show of emotion, he put, can't believe the news is all true, but also threw in there that hadn't been reported by the sites that Keith had taken his own life. Now, we don't know any more than that. It will be something that obviously will come out. I mean, you've already seen. If you go on the internet, you go on Twitter, you go on social media, that's something else we're going to talk about in a second. It is a huge news story. And one of the ways that I saw it, if you're around the same age that I am, the Prodigy was one of those bands where when you first started to understand what music is, I mean, we all get into pop music, and then kind of other bands pop up from nowhere. The Prodigy were interesting because the song Firestarter, I looked it up earlier, sold 600,000 copies in the UK, went to number one, knocked Take That off number one. I don't know if Take That were big in America or not, but they were a huge British boy band. And it was the first time, if you were sort of getting into music, getting into genres and different stuff like that, that a band came along and kind of challenged you in a different way, because the Prodigy obviously were accessible to an extent, or at least Firestarter was, hence why it went to number one. And yet when you started listening to other songs that they had done and the kind of genres they were mixing, I think they were born out of the acid movement, but they absolutely took stuff from metal and rock and all kind of different sort of parts of music and pushed it together. They did challenge you. They were the first band you're like, well, I think I like them, but it's going to take me a while to break them down before I can get to other stuff. Point being, massive band, massive story, and the fact that it turns out that again, we'll get more details as it goes, but you'd have to assume, and I think it's fair to say this, that if Keith did, commit suicide, it was probably down to something to do with mental health, depression, any of the words that you want to throw in there when it comes to that kind of stuff. Now, we have actually talked about this on the vlogs before, but I kind of thought it was important to, it always somehow manages to hit home a little bit better when you have a real life situation you can equate that to. And something we did talk about ages ago, I think it was when the Linkin Park guy died, I always forget his name, but when he did the same thing, is that there seems to be this notion, and this is one of the reasons I wanted to do it as well, because on Twitter, you always get the lovely people coming out going, oh, I don't know what he had to be sorry about, he's really money and famous. But that's the point, and that's the kind of the stigma that we need to move away from and try and explain to people, well, no, it doesn't work like that, because it doesn't matter how famous you are. It doesn't matter how much money you have. Really, as this one kind of, I think, packs a bigger punch almost. It doesn't even matter the relationships that you have. Like, I don't know what Keith Flint, his personal life was about, but, other people in the same situation, they have had wives and children, and clearly people that they love. But, depression, mental health doesn't discriminate. Like, if you do fall into those waters, you may have loads of positive stuff in your life, but for some reason, you just can't break the chain. It doesn't matter how much money you have or how successful you are, how more famous you get. I mean, to me, Keith Flint felt like someone who almost, he didn't feel like he was massively in the spotlight. Like, I know Prodigy aren't as big now as they once were, as the music industry has changed and all that nonsense. But it's not like this. You don't open a door when you become famous or successful and all of a sudden you have no problems anymore. It does work the other way. So for example, if you are stressed about money and then money is no longer a problem, then of course you're going to remove that, and that in itself could lead you to better times and, allow you to leave struggles you've had in the past there, which is awesome. That's great, but it's an individual thing. And I do think it's really important to have this conversation, because the two things I have seen on social media is one, what an idiot, which is just incredibly stupid and ignorant. But also on top of that, a lot of people coming out, understanding the point, but saying, yes, but it is hard to talk about because of those people we've just mentioned. So you get this back and forth, which is another reason why I wanted to talk about it, because hopefully having these kind of chats and having these, I'll call it a relaxed conversation, but obviously it's never really relaxed when you're talking about these subjects. But hopefully it does start to break down, these negative vibes that are around it, and proves that you can talk about it. Much like we always say this: if you break your arm, it's really easy because you either got a bone coming out of it or a doctor will put a cast around it. So it's not hard for other people to understand that you've got a problem. But when it comes to mental health and it's in your brain, there is nothing. So the only thing you can do, and absolutely what you should do, is speak out about it. Talk to a friend, talk to a counsellor. There's loads of hotlines you can ring. But unfortunately, if you say that to the wrong person, they can react in a really, really, really stupid way. And that's obviously going to make you feel worse. Because if someone does do that, you're probably going to fall into a bigger depression and start thinking, maybe I've done something wrong. I mean, you absolutely haven't. That's the key. I mean, that's the most important part. And I don't like to say this. There's no silver lining to someone committing suicide. But hopefully, now that we are here, it can start to show more and more individuals why we do have to speak up about this more, and why people should be as comfortable as they can to go to a friend or any of the people that I just listed without feeling like they're going to be knocked back. Because when you do get knocked back over and over, or for whatever reason, it could be other things we haven't even talked about, you don't feel like you can open up. This is, of course, what's going to happen. Because think of any moment in your life where you have been struggling. And we've all had these thoughts where some people even say it out loud to themselves. They say, I'd do anything, I'd do X if only I could get rid of Y. And a lot of times we say that stuff tongue in cheek, but some people, they genuinely mean it. They're struggling so much, they're like, I'll do anything to get rid of this. And it's why, some people get addicted to alcohol or drugs, because if you do go out and you get wasted, or, you take cocaine, whatever, and it makes you feel better, even if it's for 5 or 10 minutes, then you feel like you found a way out. Unfortunately, other problems comes with that. But that's why addiction, I think, is far more easier to grab. This is a whole different struggle when you're in it, but it's far easier to grab when you break it down like that. And then that can lead to the point where, if you are really getting up every day thinking to yourself, I just don't want to do this anymore, then of course at some point you're going to have the thought, well, maybe I should just end it. And if it does get really bad, you'll go and do it. And it's good for nobody, obviously. There was an amazing quote, and I always forget it. It always pops into my head when I'm talking about this stuff, and then I forget it. But it's something like, when somebody commits suicide, the pain doesn't go away. It just transfers across to somebody else. The point being that person may have killed themselves and they're free of that pain, but their friends, their family, their loved ones, they now have to try and, because the one word you always see, from close loved ones when people do commit suicide is that people are angry, right? And they're angry because they don't understand. And again, it's a two-way street. We'll use the Keith Flint situation. Maybe he didn't reach out as he could have done. And on the other side, someone probably thinks, oh, why didn't I try harder? Why didn't I ask more questions? When I saw this, or maybe, this is just a random thought, but maybe somebody has tried to say something to you and you've kind of fobbed them off because basically because people still look down upon it, which is crazy. We shouldn't be doing that in 2019. We do have this wonderful tool such as social media, which does make it far easier. Because, I saw earlier, I did a little tweet about it just because I felt like it was important, hence why I'm doing this video. And the kind of, reaction and replies that you get, it does make you think, okay, a lot of people do get this, but unfortunately there are, thousands of other people that don't. So, it's one of those things, obviously, heartfelt thoughts to anyone related to Keith Flint or his friends, his family, his band members, whatever. I'm not trying to sit here and pretend I'm going through what they're going through. I was always a fan of the band, and it's always one of those things where you see the headline, you think to yourself, no way, and then you go on a crazy internet search-a-thon, and you just keep reading every single article, even though every article is just going to tell you the same thing, because that's what websites do. But I think it's important to talk about this stuff. I think we have to try and use these situations as best as we possibly can to make the conversation louder, so that in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, we don't have to read about these headlines anymore, and we can, again, try and break down mental health and just try and make it more of a general conversation, because the more general and easy things are, the less people are going to feel like they can't speak out, and they will speak out. Hopefully they'll get help, and everybody is happy. So yeah, that's that. We'll round it up there. Again, there's loads of other vlogs you can go check out in case you want to understand the format a bit more, do all the YouTube stuff. Not going to go into that again, just in case you missed it at the start. Demonetize this video. It's not about that. It's about the message. And yeah, subscribe. And if you do subscribe, hopefully I'll see you again soon.